Hello everybody and welcome back to the FPL Phillips YouTube channel and to my wildcard draft video ahead of Game Week 8. I hope you guys are all having a fantastic weekend or start your week depending on when you're watching this. And I'm excited to be bringing to you another FPL video covering all the best players I think you guys should be targeting, the essential players to have in your team, and then some discussion around some of the key assets and the ones I would be going for and aiming to get your team towards in the form of a wildcard team. So I'll be doing that with some comparisons along the way, as I mentioned. Before we get into it, make sure to hit the thumbs up button if you do enjoy it at the end, and also hit the subscribe button now if you would, if you're new to the channel, if you'd like to see some more FPL content from myself throughout the season. Without that said and done, let's get into things and kick things off with the goalkeeper. We're going to be going for David Raya, which is becoming a bit of a theme with these wildcard drafts if you've seen any of my previous videos, but I still think that Raya is the best goalkeeping option to own right now. 5.6 million is tremendous value for someone in that Arsenal backline. Someone like a Timber seems to not really be coming into that category. Same with Calafiori. It's hard to target any other outfield defender, so I think Raya is just the best option if you want to go for a double up on the Arsenal defence. And now, Arsenal have a few tough fixtures coming up on paper. They've got Liverpool, they've got Chelsea, both in the next 4 games. But I definitely wouldn't be letting that put you off if you're on a wild card going for David Raya. I think that the 4.5 million options aren't looking all that convincing. People might be discussing a Flecken, but Brentford have looked very poor at the back. They shipped quite a number of goals to Wolves just today as I'm recording this on Saturday evening. You've got Robert Sanchez, who I'm yet to see play, of course, in Game Week 7, but Chelsea also haven't looked too convincing and have some very tough fixtures coming up next, as we'll discuss later. And then you've got maybe someone like a Jordan Pickford you could go for, but all in all, I think spending that extra little million and, well, 0.1 as well is worth it on David Raya. And after these 4 games are done, Arsenal have a tremendous run of fixtures up until like the Game Week 20 mark, where we get that second wildcard chip, of course. So it's important with your goalkeeper because it's very suboptimal to be making goalkeeper transfers to make sure you go with a pick that you're confident in long term. And I'm just not sure I can say that for any of the 4.5 million options. So that's why David Raya makes it into this side ahead of them. He's going to be joined by his teammate Gabriel in defence. I don't think it'll be too much of a surprise to any of you, I should say. 6.2 million for him, the main target of all those Arsenal corners heading into the box. As mentioned, I'm still confident in Arsenal as a defence, even with some of these tough fixtures over the next 4. I could see them going to St James's Park, for example, and getting a clean sheet there. I definitely don't think it's out of the realms of possibility with how poor Newcastle have seemed lately. And we saw last season, and even earlier this season, how Arsenal can get clean sheets against some of the big teams. They did it against Aston Villa, albeit with quite a lot of help from David Raya in goal, but Raya is a good goalkeeper, so that's to be expected. So all in all, I think Arsenal can do well up until Game Week 20, mainly in the nice fixture run, obviously, but even over these next 4, I wouldn't feel disheartened for the hopes of a clean sheet when you're looking at the best defence in the league, no doubt in my view. Then the other 3 defenders that will be starting, or some of them will starting week in, week out, will be between Aina, Lewis and Aït-Nouri. So I've opted to go for 3 sub 5 million defenders rather than going for a second premium and then rotating just 2 cheaper defenders. I like this strategy. I like these 3 assets. Rico Lewis, I think, would be a definite lock-in to my side. I'd have to have him in at 4.7 million for this really nice run of fixtures that Man City have got going. He's playing week in, week out, it seems now. And also, he's got great attacking threat going forward, even when Man City concede a goal, which tends to be happening quite a lot. I can't remember the last time I got a clean sheet from a Man City defender, but we have to believe that it will and happen at some point, and then Lewis will be great value and make even more of a mockery of that 4.7 million price tag than he already is doing. Now, Aina at Nottingham Forest could equally be a Milenkovic, or you could go for Murillo, both centre-back options who you could argue might be more secure for minutes, but Aina's played 90 over every game so far this season. So when Moreno came in, it looked like it might be a bit of a threat to Aina, who of course can cover both the left and the right, but he's been playing on the right. Nico Williams has been missing out, and I think Aina's position in the team is secure, and I think he's just a bit more of a threat when it comes to bonus points, and also going forward, he can sometimes look a threat. Milenkovic has put up some decent XG numbers himself, so like I said, you could equally, at the same price point, go for Milenkovic, and maybe feel more confident in yourself that you've got a centre-back who is at pretty much no risk of rotation there. And then finally, Aït-Nouri is a player who I spoke about last week, Then this game week went and got a goal and an assist, so give myself a bit of a pat on the back for that one, not that anyone cares. Yeah, but 4.4 million, I thought it was tremendous value. Looking at his XG, the numbers last week were 0.44 expecting goal involvements per 90. I imagine that average per game has gone up even more after the game between Wolves and Brentford. But yeah, he'd be on the bench for this game, of course, with Aina and Lewis starting, but after that Man City fixture in game week 8, he would definitely be coming in for some of the games he's got coming up next, namely at home to Crystal Palace and Southampton, which both look like great opportunities to hopefully get him forward and grab some attacking returns, even if Wolves don't look too much likely to get a clean sheet, basically. So he's in there for the attacking threat, not for the clean sheets. And then Greaves at Ipswich, who I do still think is probably just about the best 4.0 million defender, just for the assurance of minutes. You've got like a Van der Berg at Brentford who, might have better fixtures right now. If he comes in, is definitely more likely to get you a clean sheet than an Ipswich defender, you'd have to say. But I still think that Greaves, long term, like I said, you don't want to be making transfers in goal, and you definitely don't want to be making transfers with your 4.0 million defender. So Greaves, for that assurance of long-term minutes and, 1 or 2 points really off the bench, if you do need it, is probably the way to go over Van der Berg at Brentford. Anyways, into midfield and something more exciting. We're talking about the structure here as to whether or not you go with Saka and Palmer, or whether you just kind of go with one of them, probably just Saka in this case, because it does make a big difference. Now, the squad's going to have Haaland in it. I don't think that's too much of a spoiler to reveal to you guys now. But the main debate will be for Palmer, I think, and whether or not it's worth spending that extra money on him right now, with Chelsea having some difficult fixtures coming up inside the next 4 game weeks. So they face Liverpool and they face Arsenal in the span of the next 4 weeks. Now, I haven't seen Palmer play in Game Week 7 at the time of recording this. It's Saturday evening, very, very late on Saturday evening. But I wanted to get this video out to you guys as early as possible, so you'll have one extra game of watching Palmer if you saw the game, or just looking at the data if that's your preferred route to go down. But yeah, I still think Palmer is a very good option to go for. I think he's got such a high point ceiling and such great haul potential that having him in your FPL team is just a very good idea. And there are some good lower budget options and more maybe higher value players when it comes to cost per points per cost, etc, etc. But in my view, Palmer is offering a brilliant pick, and the funds are very, very well spent in there. So for me, Palmer's going to be in this draft. I will show you another variation in just a moment if you don't want to go with Palmer, because there's always that potential to go without him for maybe just 3 or 4 weeks and then look to transfer him in around that game week 12 mark and bring him in then instead, because Chelsea again have a bit of a turn in fixtures where they come to a more easier patch. And the rest of the team doesn't look like you're going to need to spend too many transfers there. One position where you probably won't be transferring unless it's an injury is going to be Brian Mbeumo at Brentford, who picked up yet another goal in Game Week 7. Yeah, he looks a lock in pretty much any team, I would say. They've got Ipswich and Bournemouth at home over the next 4, Brentford, where I can see there definitely being more goals in those games. Away at Manchester United, I think equally in there, what looks like their downfall and maybe the end of Erik ten Hag at the moment, there could be some goals in that one for Brentford too, who've been scoring a lot at the moment. So yeah, and Mbeumo's definitely a lock in my side. I don't think there's any other Brentford asset you can really go for at the mo, just because someone like a Shard or a Carvalho just haven't been nailing down consistent minutes despite their low price tags. Someone who has been getting consistent minutes despite his low price though is Morgan Rogers at Aston Villa, another one who I'm yet to see play in Game Week 7 though. Aston Villa, I think, although they've got Tottenham and Liverpool in the next 4, still are a good team to target, and Rodgers still only 5.3 million. Bournemouth and Crystal Palace at home in these next 4. You can hopefully navigate, maybe even bench him for that Liverpool game for the last man on the bench, Tyler Dibbling. So yeah, Rodgers still my pick here, but Semenyo at Bournemouth is also a nice option. And spoiler, he'll be in the other variation of this draft just to show what the difference looks like there. But Tyler Dibbling is still a great asset in my view. Obviously, we had Southampton away at Arsenal last week, but he still put up decent numbers there. Actually, 0.13 expected goal involvements away at Arsenal isn't something to scoff at, and from the eye test, he still looked pretty good there, was making exciting runs. So yeah, 4.6 million is still a great price tag for him Leicester and Everton at home is also what I'm looking at. Two teams who didn't perform too badly defensively actually last game week out, but over the first few game weeks of the season have not impressed me at all. So for Southampton, this is going to be some of their best opportunities to get points. You'd expect them to go ham at home at St Mary's. And yeah, Dibbling can definitely come in when some players have more difficult fixtures, and Semenyo rotates pretty perfectly with that, as we'll see in a mo. But even with Rodgers, as I said, 2 game weeks down the line, when we've got game week 10, Rodgers, Liverpool away, Dibbling, Everton at home. He can come in for that one and start as part of the midfield 4. And then finally, up front, we've got some value to spend. So we've got Haaland, Solanke, and then Delap in here. So Haaland and Solanke would be my kind of nailed-on picks. Another one who's yet to play in Solanke, but Spurs have some great fixtures coming up next. Haaland's obviously going to be in here, pretty much captain every week. Southampton at home, I'd be maybe even looking at triple captaining him there if you haven't used the chip. I know he's not been in the finest form right now, with 2 blanks in the last 2 game weeks, and people might be losing their patience a little bit with him. But for me, of course, he's still going to be in this draft. Solanke at 7.6 million does look good. I've considered having Watkins in here. We'll see in a moment how that changes things, but with the budget spent on Palmer, that's just not affordable. But Solanke is still a very, very strong option here at 7.6 million. He's looked good so far. There's not really too much more to say. I think Spurs will kick on over this next spell of fixtures, which looks very good for them. And I think another team who can do well attacking-wise over the next few are Ipswich. And Delap has looked fantastic. He's been getting quite a number of goals, and he's only 5.6 million. People have been jumping on the Calvert-Lewin train. They've been jumping on the Chris Wood train. It feels like there's been a lot of hype trains for budget strikers. Delap is the latest one, pretty much, in that craze. And I think that Delap has got one competition, really, for this spot that I'm going to move to and compare him against now, because it was so hard to split these two that I had to make a graphic for it and break it down for you, my decision-making. And that man is Raul Jimenez, and he is one who's undoubtedly, when you look at the stats here, just does look better on paper. Now, the expected FPL points per 90 go massively in favour of the Mexican, 9.31 compared to that was 4.36 over the 90, per 90 over the season so far. The fixtures are very, very close. Fulham ranks 6th for fixture difficulty attacking-wise over the next 6, whereas Ipswich is 7th, so very, very close there. The XG goes in favour of Jimenez. The expected assists go in favour of Jimenez. FPL Review actually have Delap predicted to score more points over the next 3 fixtures, but they look very good on paper for Ipswich, who've got Everton and Leicester at home over those next 3 games. So, it looks pretty good for Delap over the next 3, but long term, when you look at the fixture difficulty up until the game week 20 mark, Fulham are in 2nd, I believe it is, with Ipswich a little bit further down. So Jimenez looks a pretty nice long-term pick, and one thing I would say is that even with them both at the same price, Delap is going to get more minutes, but it's not massively more. I've looked at Jimenez over the last few. He's been averaging around 80 minutes per game, which is not too bad, and he's been looking very, very good in that time. Fulham have looked pretty impressive, I would say, and he's looked attacking. So if you want to take a bit more of a risky punt, I would go for Jimenez. Unfortunately, he's on my renowned FPL troll list of players I will never buy again, so I couldn't willingly put him in this draft. But if you don't have so much of a troll status for Jimenez in yourself and so much prejudice against the guy as an FPL asset, not as an actual human, I should say, then you could go for him and pick him. And I do, as much as I hate it, think he looks like a good option right now, but it's the same situation for me as a Luca Dean or a Sterling. If I was considering putting them in my team, I just hold up, wait a minute, remember what happened in the past. That was at Wolves, that was a long time ago. He's looking like a very good player at the moment. So yeah, you guys can make up your own mind based on that, based on what you've seen from them playing and or how the stats are presented to you now. And then the other main difference in structure between the teams is the last thing that we need to discuss. And I'm going to switch over now and show you how this team changes if you remove Cole Palmer from it, and the decision I've made with regards to which midfield option to replace him with. So watch closely now as Bernardo Silva comes into this midfield, and it allows for a few upgrades elsewhere. I also made that change with Semenyo in for Rodgers. That wasn't really a budget thing, you could kind of do that either way, but I just wanted to show how him and Dibbling's fixtures side by side with Leicester and Everton over those next 3 game weeks do make a difference. So you would start Dibbling in this game week, and then when Everton face off against Southampton and and Semenyo's got Man City. So you don't get as much value out of Semenyo, and that's kind of why I like having Rodgers in. You could still have Rodgers in as well as Ollie Watkins, but that would mean, of course, a double up on the Villa attack. It depends whether you want to go there. And Ollie Watkins is who's come in up front. Instead of going for that third budget forward, we've gone for a more expensive option. We've gone for a cheaper option in midfield in the form of a Bernardo Silva, and then that's allowed a bit of an upgrade at the back as well. Aina's left for Pedro Porro, who's come in. I did have actually 6 million, so if you wanted to go for, for a Robertson, say, who did actually get benched last game week, so it might be a little bit of a rotation risk at the most, so maybe you'd avoid. That's why I've gone for Porro, basically, instead of someone like a Robertson. And the fixtures, as we said with Solanke, look very good for Spurs right now. But Bernardo Silva at 6.5 million is not going to be a popular one. There are quite a few other options around that price point you could go for. Brennan Johnson looks pretty good right now. I think if Garnacho continues to start at Manchester United and they can turn things around, could be an okay pick. But I wanted to bring Bernardo in to kind of compare him to a player that I think will become a popular point of discussion over the next few, and that is Phil Foden. And now Foden's the more expensive of the two options by quite some margin. He's up at 9.2 million, but I just don't think Foden's found his feet quite yet in the Man City side this season, and that's maybe why I wouldn't be looking to jump on him now. Now, Foden could well start finding form and start scoring some big points. We know when he's in form, he's got massive haul potential. He could score 2-3 goals per game, something that you're probably unlikely to see from someone like a Bernardo Silva, but he does just save you a lot of money going for this guy. You could go for an equivalent, like I mentioned with those other options, but Bernardo is quite an interesting punt, I think, right now. Now, no Man City player really is safe for minutes. You've got your Haaland, you've got your Ederson, obviously players like that, but I think the midfield is always where there's been a lot of rotation, a lot of options available. But Bernardo's played 90 over pretty much all but one game so far this season. His expected FPL points per 90 are outscoring Foden quite significantly, 6.10 compared to Foden's 4.88. I would say with a caveat to this, Foden's only played just over 120 minutes, I think it is, so far this season. So this is a small sample size, and Foden last season, his data did look pretty good. But so far this campaign, Bernardo's been equal with him for XG and has been better than him by quite a bit for expected assists per 90. The shots on target per 90 also very equal, although Foden has taken slightly more shots. The expected points is where it gets interesting, because FPL Review come in and they've said, don't even think about Bernardo Silva. 9.1 predicted points over the next 3 when they've got Wolves, Southampton and Bournemouth, compared to Foden's 17 expected points over the next 3, which would leave me to believe that maybe it's a minutes thing. Now, I'm not the best person to consult with regards to minutes and predicting Pep Guardiola. I think there are better people over on places like X or Twitter to go and look at predicted lineups and see the assessment of minutes. But whether or not you want to go for Bernardo Silva or a safer pick, this is the kind of structure I would be looking at. And I thought it was just maybe food for thought for a few players who haven't considered either of these two as an option quite yet, but will be doing when Man City hit this nice fixture run, which they've got starting now. So yeah, back to this, which was the second variation of the wildcard draft. What I want you guys to drop a comment down below on is which of these drafts do you think is better, this version, or going back to it, the first version with Palmer, Delap and Aina, with Rodgers in as well, but kind of ignore the Rodgers Semenyo pick. You can go whichever you want. But yeah, back to the second version now. So this is draft 2. Draft 1 was the one before. Drop a comment down below, I should say, with which draft you think is the better. As I mentioned at the start, if you have enjoyed the video, please do leave a like and subscribe if you're new around here and did enjoy things and would like to see more from me in the future. But with all that said and done, I will love you and leave you until the next video, where hopefully I'll see you there.